Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and welcome to another episode for the Coaching Conversations podcast. Now, we are on Stitcher, we are on iTunes, and multiple different channels. Please check us out. Now, one of the things that you'll get out of our podcast episodes is a lot of content, a lot of strategy. It's not fluff, it's not concept, yet we really want you to engage with the content and let us know your feedback. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. If there's topics you'd love to have us address, we would love to share them with you. Let us know your impact and let us know your feedback. For years, I've worked with the Milwaukee Brewers sales organization, and I'll never forget my first meeting with the Brewers and Jim Bavey. I had a great ex-employee, Jennifer, who set up the meeting, and it was really interesting because when I met with Jim, I would tell you that it wasn't hugs and kisses when we met each other. I could tell something was on his mind, and he asked me a really tough question, yet I looked back and thought, you know what? It's one of the most fair questions I ever had. He said, are you going to come in with a static program every year? And he kind of started to describe his frustration with something. I'm thinking, hey, pal, I just met you. What are you mad at me for? And I finally said to him, I said, so what happened? He said, well, we've worked with people and they come in with the same program. I said, no, everything I do is customized, but I hate training. He goes, what do you mean you hate training? I go, development of staff has to come from within the organization. 1, 2, 3, 5 days with me, one time a year will never get you where you want to go. He said, what are you talking about? I said, in sales, one of the greatest gifts we can have is to learn from each other. But most sales organizations have what? Salespeople that think about themselves. I often think about the word ego. Ego is at the forefront of salespeople's brains, and it should be. The industry is filled with a lot of rejection. And at the same time, that very ego gets in the way of learning opportunities. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people say, well, do you have any experience in our industry? And I say no, and they go, oh, really? And you want to help us? Your sales are down. You do need help. I've had people 20 to 30% down literally say to me, well, it's a tough economy. I go, well, you only sell in good economies? Think about training and coaching in 2008 to 2011 during the Great Recession. My company thrived. It wasn't easy. I don't want to profess that. So when I met with Jim, that first year, we started to implement what we call feedback progressions, giving each other feedback. We didn't start with, here's what you did wrong. We started with, here are the 3 things you did pretty well in that practice session. And during the session, Jim comes up to me and he said, so when do we get to the constructive stuff? I said, day 2. We're warming people up. We're earning trust. We're building conversational skills right now. It's going to take time. The first couple years, it was clunky. It was a little choppy, no doubt about it. 18 years later, and I would even say 16 years later, a couple years ago, one of the executives came in and watched the session and asked somebody in the session, I think asked Billy Freeze, who's leading the session? And Billy pointed to me and the guy said, he hasn't moved. He's been sitting over in the corner for 2 hours. How much are we paying this guy? And it's funny because it's the greatest compliment he could have given me. See, I'm a fan of training. I'm not a fan of training by itself, especially with sales. When you think about stalls, gatekeepers, objections, price objections, stall objections, let me think about it, objections. Could you do it for less price? Could you throw in a free game? All the stuff we go through as sales professionals, present company included, you cannot improve what you don't practice. It just doesn't work. And so the gentleman looked at me and I just sat in the corner for 2 hours and he said, man, everybody's coaching each other. And they said, well, yeah, that's what we do. Now, I'll give some constructive feedback towards the Milwaukee Brewers sales organization. I think their greatest aha moments are when people leave. When there are people who have left, who have gone on to start their own real estate companies, they've gone on to be CEOs of companies, they'll look back and say, man, I wish I could get that culture at my own organization. I wish I could still participate in that. And the reason I say that it's constructive feedback, sometimes when I share with my friends at the Brewers how unique their culture is, I think sometimes it falls on deaf ears. I think they trust me, yet they live it so much, they don't understand why other people don't do it. Now, let me give you case in point. I was at an organization, and I told this story this year at a wealth management company for one of our clients. It's a division of one of our financial service clients. And the president asked me to sit in. And he asked me to just observe. As I sat in the meeting, the vice president of sales turned to me and he said, well, tell me a little bit about your company. And I thought that was such an awkward transition because I was there to observe. I wasn't there to participate. And I told him, and he said, well, do you have much experience in wealth management? I said, no, I don't. And he began to laugh at me, literally laugh at me. He goes, okay, well, I guess we can hear your sales pitch. And I want to stop there. I wasn't there for a sales pitch. I was asked by the president of the division who liked me, trusted me, found my stuff to be valuable for whatever reason. And literally, he looked dismayed. And I said, do you mind if I share something with you? The vice president said, sure. And he's smirking at me. I go, I'm not here for a sales presentation. I didn't call this meeting. He did. And I pointed to the president. I was just asked to observe. I can leave. I'd love to ask you a couple questions. He said, sure. Now, I think the president knew this was going to happen. And I looked at the vice president and I said, do you have experience in wealth management? He said, you're darn right I do, 22 years. I said, I have 2 more questions and that's it. And then I can leave. And he said, okay. And he's still laughing and smirking at me. I said, are your sales up or down? Before you answer, I know the answer. He said, well, that's kind of a tough question, to answer. No, it's not. I said, are your sales up or down? The president looked at him and said, tell him. He said, well, we're a little down. See, here's the tough thing, everybody. I teach something called RIRE. And what we do when things are tough is we change the story so we feel better about it. And I looked at him and I said, they're down 17 points. He said, yeah, that's about right. Now his voice is softer. The ego has left the room. The confidence is now gone. And I look at him and I go, and you're the one with the experience. Packed up my backpack, walked out. Later, the president asked me to sit down with him, which I did, of course. And I sat down and I said, I don't know where that came from. He goes, look, I owe you an apology. And I said, no, that's okay. I said, we all make mistakes. And I said, can I just give you some really good advice? He said, sure. I said, I don't think I'm always right, but I know one thing. When you're vulnerable and open to getting better, don't let your ego get in the way because ego stands for eroding growth opportunities. And his jaw dropped and it kind of hit him. I think it was an aha moment. I said, be vulnerable. Tell your people you're improving because then they'll improve. See, one of the things I hear all the time is it's all about the numbers. Bullshit. If it's all about the numbers, then hit your numbers every damn time. It's about the people who produce the numbers. And when you have leaders like Jim Bavey at the Milwaukee Brewers and Billy Freeze and Dan Wilkerman and Jake Mensch and Chris Kimball and Jason Fry and Chris Rothwell and Joe Robinson, these people connect with their people. They meet them with where they're at and they help them where they want to go. The motivation's never been higher, ever. I've never had a down year there. In 18 years, I've never seen non-participation. That, my friends, is not a reflection of my company. That's a reflection of the culture they've created. So when you think about building a culture, train your leaders to coach. Facilitate practice comfortably. Focus on the good things people are doing. They know they need to improve. They're not dumb. Just don't dwell on it because it wears people down. So when people say, is this possible? The Milwaukee Brewers sales organization is absolute proof that coaching cultures that are highly collaborative, low turnover, high performance improvement is possible every day. Thank you for listening to another episode of Coaching Conversations by Tim Hagan and Progress Coaching. Now, our company is always coming out with new and innovative solutions to help leaders coach their employees. And recently, we just created a new service called Coach to You, where leaders can pick and choose topics and assign 7 to 21-day programs for employees to learn and, more importantly, apply actions and then reflect and share what they're going to do going forward as a result of the learning. It's called Coach to You. We're literally bringing coaching to your employees. If you're intrigued, we'll have a link in each one of our episodes where you can get more information. And again, thank you so much for listening to another episode.